appreciate it for coming out tonight. My name's JP. I'm the planning board chair. I'm just going to be kind of guiding this workshop as we go along. We're going to review a few things first as a board, and then tonight, since we've got a full crowd, we'll probably limit comments or questions to like 1 minute at most. And it's not that we don't appreciate your input. We just don't want to be here like forever because there's a lot to cover. So, yeah, it's a 1 minute comment. You can talk a lot in 1 minute. I just did it in 1 minute and 30 seconds. So, and if we do need more time, then we'll work with it. Okay. So, wait. Can I call the meeting to order? Yeah. This isn't good. Yeah. Motion to call the meeting to order. Everybody in favor? Aye. All right. Hey, Lindsay, will you set up? Camera?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, we're all set.
I see it over here. Okay. So the last workshop that we had, I was just reviewing the meeting notes. What we decided to do is to break this ordinance that's going to go before the public into 4 different sections. So those sections, excuse me, not 4, it's like 5, right? And those sections were medical marijuana retail store, medical marijuana cultivation facility, medical marijuana testing facility, and then medical marijuana manufacturing facility tier 1 and manufacturing facility tier 2. So what I've done is I've gone through and I've taken, this is like 80% complete. I've taken those, I'll pass this down for you guys to look at. Good. So I've taken those top categories, and those are each of the articles that will go before the public for a vote. Now, the way that we have to structure this is like one article will be medical marijuana retail stores or storefronts, so whatever the definition is in the regulation. And it will have either yes, permitted, requires a special permit, requires site plan review, or no, not permitted. Within each zone of the town. That's village residential, rural residential, farm and forest, light industrial, public works, and resource conservation. It'll be pre-filled, and then on these articles below that are a couple of stipulations which provide the town the ability to take action if a business isn't meeting all of the expectations of the town. Past that, and I'll pass these around for you guys to take a look at, is going to be yes or no vote. Do you, the public, agree, yes or no, this should be allowed within these specific zones or not allowed? The challenging part for us as a board is defining these zones and what should be permissible, what should not be permissible, what should require just a site plan review, and what should require a special exemption permit. During our last meeting, we were able to go through as a board and have some public input about each of these zones, and I think there was 6 zones that we have conflicting opinions on, I guess you could say. So I think if you guys are okay with it, we can start off by addressing the first one, kind of debating back and forth, maybe take some questions, comments.
First article.
Well, so
What are you talking about? Just
the first one that's kind of open right now, which was cultivation facilities
in
in the village. But I don't want to like hog everything. So do you guys have anything that you've researched, thought about, you want to put out there?
No, I just have a question. If we're going to put it out to a vote,
you want to put the time in on the front end figuring out the zoning, because if the vote doesn't go one way, we kind of wasted some time. So I don't know if we're trying to structure some language for, I mean, it looks like you got that done here. So I guess what I'm asking is, what we're going to do is we're going to figure out all the zoning now, then we'll put it out to a vote, but if the vote goes no in a certain way, then the work we've done doesn't really matter, right?
Correct.
So how much time do you want to put in on the front end, working on the zoning, before we put it out to the town to vote? Is that what we need to do? We need to get the zoning out before they can actually vote on it,
We don't, but in order to make it into ordinance,
right?
it would be, so are you suggesting like putting out to a vote, should we allow retail shops, yes or no?
Right.
Just that?
And then we work on, that's similar to what the state's done, you know, they put
Right.
the vote out pretty wide and then figure the details out later.
So that would do two things. Number one, it would be effective in figuring out if we need to spend time addressing the zoning and how it should shake out. But also number two, we're talking about maybe a two-month process to get that vote to happen.
Right.
And then it would be, you know, a longer time to work out the individual zoning. Now, I'm not opposed to it. I just, yeah, I'm open.
But the language in the art, I mean, ultimately, doesn't that have to be in there though? At some point, there has to be a vote.
It does, yeah. So
So he's looking at like two different
Current-
voting processes.
And I
Right.
think the thing too to remember is like, we're not going right from here straight to a vote. Like, we will have a public hearing,
Right.
which means there will be public input at that point. So at that point, you know, we can still address like, hey, you have, you know, site plan review listed for this zone. Then the public can hash that out a little bit more. We can take that into consideration and either address it or,
Right.
and then eventually that would help craft the inevitable ordinance.
So would you guys like to spend some time talking about zoning, or do you think bang for a buck would be focusing more on putting the ordinance out? I mean, do you want to talk about the zoning? We'll start with cultivation, maybe discuss it a little bit.
So to go to your main point though, like the current requirements for people to have any of these things by the state with their new laws is that a town has to first opt in, which that would satisfy that, but then by opting in, they have to create their own ordinances.
Right.
Right,
So, I mean, you know, if we did it that way, people would function under the state ordinances until we get our ordinances squared away?
well, they couldn't
If we
operate.
opted in though. I
Right.
mean, actually, whatever way you guys want to do this, if you want to discuss ordinances, let's just do that.
So, I mean, opting in is step one, I mean, but it can happen at the same time. You opt in. Well, no, you really can't get it.
Well, so you have to opt in by voting
Right.
that a specific thing should be allowed within the town.
Okay. That's the opt, okay.
Right, so, I mean, that would satisfy the opt-in portion, but it wouldn't satisfy the creating the ordinance portion.
Right.
And I guess, I don't know how much different, we're talking about six things, so like, I don't know how much different, like, the front end work would be as opposed to the back end. I'm not sure. Now, I should mention too, I've had a couple of calls, and one of the recommendations was that a special committee be established. And these are by private citizens. A special committee should be established to handle like creating this ordinance.
Isn't that us?
Right.
Planning board?
Well, yeah, but like the comprehensive committee,
Right.
similar to that.
If we were going to do that, that would seriously put a drag and slow it down. I would say it would be best to put the ordinance out for a vote if we were going to do a committee, and then have a committee structure the zoning. But if we go for a committee, I mean, that's a 2-year event for the comprehensive.
Right,
plan.
yeah.
We're not going to do it
Yeah.
2 years.
I just wanted to relay like
Right,
some of the things.
right. I mean,
So-
it might make sense,
I
but
think, like efficiently, we are either appointed or elected to these positions by the public, that we represent and include the public into, into this process. So I think that we're doing our due diligence by not establishing a committee. on the other hand, like, it would like defer any conspiracy theorist, inclinations from members of the public that, anyone has bias on the board, one way or the other, you know.
We can do everything by committee in that case.
Right. No, I'm just relaying information. Like, I think we've started the process. I think we've been involved in this for a little over a year.
Don't make a committee, you don't need to go backwards, but
Right.
personally.
Doesn't matter what committee it is, you're always gonna get
Hold on a second, guys.
What's that?
Yeah, so my inclination also is to not. So if there's nobody interested in that, then we'll keep going.
Well, I mean, I guess to your point though, I mean, if we wanted to, if we were to break this into two separate things, we could have just the overarching, like, do you want retail stores, yes or no, do you want this, yes or no. Once we have that sorted out, then we know which ones to focus on and which zonings to focus on. Rather than,
Mike?
but you know, again, like, either way, it's gonna have to get done regardless, but again, like, hypothetically, if every one of these gets voted down now, and
Then
it's
we don't
not
have to
allowed,
spend any time.
then we're done,
But
kinda, you know?
the other part of it though is like, so if I'm looking at a vote that says, yes or no, do I want this? You know, it helps me to have context
If you're not-
of where I'm saying yes or no
If you're
to.
not privy to what's happening, what's going on, then you're just like,
Right.
you know.
Oh, if I say yes, then we're gonna have this everywhere in the town.
Right, not knowing that the state also has its own set of regulations as well.
Right. So I think, yeah, if you guys are comfortable, let's see how far we can get within sorting out the discrepancies of where everyone didn't agree on. And then we'll judge how we go. Does that sound-
Sounds good.
Okay.
Complete thing we can put out there.
Yeah.
Like the
If we're almost there.
most effective trajectory.
Yeah.
Done. Okay.
So we want to start Article 1.
I'm gonna take
We had some questions
three
back here.
questions.
just
I hear
A
you.
question on how this should proceed. I don't really, my thing is, you're addressing it like asking me, first we have to approve this, then this, then this. If there's, do you, perhaps, and I'm part of the comprehensive plan committee and how we're approaching it is, do you want this? And then we ask, well, what's the next revision? And I don't know if it has to be a vote or however you want to handle it, but to go into a vote and say, do you want this in Parsonsfield? Then, well, do you want it in, another vote on what zones do you want it in, and blah, blah, blah. No wonder it's gonna take years. Can you find a way to combine it all, say, do you want this? If you do want this, where?
And I think that's basically what we're.
Well, I'm sorry, I just walked in, I didn't hear that, because you're
Yeah.
talking about a vote about
Right.
blah.
No, so-
It seemed to be a single issue you're asking a vote on as
Well,
opposed to.
that was the question. So
Okay.
can you pass those to the audience, like kind of pass them around?
Yeah, it's just the Article 1, I just want to clarify.
Oh, there's probably definitely.
Okay, so
Go to Article 2, yeah, pass it on.
Do we want to pass out Article 1?
Article 2 is fine,
Okay.
yeah. So, you'll get an example here. So what we've done is, or what I've done is I've crafted the basic language for the vote. It'll be passed around. The question was whether we should break it up, kind of take that other step we were just talking about. What we're doing now is going ahead with the combined thing to address your question. You had a question, sir?
Yeah, unless they've changed the rules, you can't just form a committee that's official like that without getting a vote of the town meeting authorizing you to do it and advertising it. And there's all kinds of rules. Bud Runyon got on a case about this once, about
Yeah,
10 years ago.
I know when the comprehensive plan committee was established, that was done at the behest of the selectmen, because we went to the selectmen.
Well,
And said,
it hasn't been approved yet, we're being sworn in this Saturday, but
So
it's not so difficult to form a town-supported committee if one desires.
my point was just gonna be that the planning board doesn't form committees. They make a recommendation to the select board to do that. And we don't oversee any committees.
Yes.
You had one thing, or, yes?
Well, I'm from Newfield, a planning board member and a caregiver in Newfield. My understanding was, I don't know, maybe it's for new caregivers, but you cannot, like, like, you don't need to opt in for a facility unless that's a new requirement.
So, yeah, so for the newest set of medicinal laws that came out, the state is requiring towns to opt in and establish ordinance to have either retail
Yeah, that was
storefronts.
retail and processing.
Right.
I didn't think that was actually cultivation sites.
It's retail and processing.
So the,
So the whole.
the home, if you're operating a business out of your home, no. But as soon as you turn it into a commercial enterprise, then yes. From our understanding.
She just said cultivation,
Yeah, a
there's different
cultivation,
categories.
Okay,
a cultivation site growing
right.
should not really be,
I'm
it's not part of the
sorry.
opt-in, from my
A
understanding.
cultivation facility though, that's what we're addressing, like a,
A grow facility,
Right.
cultivation,
Business, established business.
whether it's
to
in my
produce and sell,
basement or
not
in a
what I do in my
building.
backyard.
Chicken farm, could be anywhere, it's cultivation soda, period, it's that category.
Like, I didn't think there was an opt-in for that category as well.
That's
Do
a
you
good
know?
question. I don't, I mean,
Because
I don't know that.
I run a business, pretty good business, and I have a lawyer.
I know we've been focused on the opt-in for retail, and maybe we've let
It's
that carry over where it's
manufacturing.
not necessary. I mean, that's something we're gonna have to find out.
Pretty
right.
sure it's all, pretty sure
Manufacturing
it's a
storefront.
lot to do with retail storefront.
Right, and I know you
It's not
can't
about
limit the
cultivation.
number of caregivers, so.
Right,
I
no,
don't know, maybe that is right, maybe there's no opt-in. That's something we'll have to find out for sure though, because I
yeah.
don't know.
Well, so,
I'm
to
pretty
your
sure
knowledge,
storefronts and manufacturing that the towns have to opt in.
And
say
testing
we want.
too, testing facilities maybe?
I mean, I can't imagine there's gonna be many testing facilities
Not-
in
not
this
Parsonsville.
whole entire state,
Yeah.
so.
hey, Lindsay, can you pull up the, just get Maine opt-in medical regulations? You said you have it? Okay, so can you provide it to the board to read? Can you find out the exact,
I've read it several times, but I couldn't tell you. Maybe I didn't show it.
what does it say for opt-in, a specific sentence? Because there's a specific sentence that says municipalities must opt in.
Right.
Yeah. So,
It's for retail. storefront.
listen, we're gonna have our secretary research it a little bit.
But I'm just trying to say to you that I'm 99% sure it's for retail storefronts.
And,
And manufacturing, so manufacturing could be like creating edibles, you know, like processing, creating oils.
Okay.
Those are,
We're not disagreeing,
I'm just, we're verifying.
getting ourselves up to speed.
What do you got?
I just completed a brand new medical marijuana grow facility and had to meet all state standards and had to have the state electrical inspector inspect it, and about everybody had to come inspect it, including your town came and inspected.
Is it in Parsonsville?
Nope, it's in Cornish. But your town came and inspected, your select board.
Oh, they came for just a tour?
Yep.
Oh, okay, not to authorize it.
No, just
Okay,
for
I
a
was gonna
tour.
say,
No,
what
for
are
a
we doing
tour, to know what
Cornish?
to know what the state actually had for laws and what they had to meet for criteria.
Right, but I know Cornish has already passed their own ordinance for medical
I'm just
marijuana.
here because I own property in Parsonsville, I'm ready to do the same thing here, so
Okay.
that's why I'm here.
Yeah, so, I mean, in your experience, did you have to go through the town for
The
planning
town
board
gave me a
approval?
cease and desist on my building for 3 months until they had it worked out, until it was all met with state, because it's a commercial facility then.
Mhm.
As soon as you enter a commercial facility, you're not growing it in your basement, you're not growing it in your garage, you're growing it in a facility to sell as a business. It became, you had to have a commercial facility and it had to pass I have to have fire suppression, state, they have to be tied up with a fire marshal, the state police.
Right,
So was there a determining factor that made that a commercial facility, say square footage or anything like that? It's just, you
No,
determined
it's just
commercial.
because of the fact you're growing for other people, it's a business now.
Right, but people have been growing for other people for 10 years
If you're
now.
doing it in your
trying to-
basement, then now you're doing it to the next level when you get to that, when you're trying to actually have a facility.
Right.
It has to meet criteria including fencing
Yeah.
for the state, everything.
Yeah.
I've been inspected by the DEA and
So
they
you
told
built
me what I had
it,
to
so it was
have.
basically inspected, you built it from the ground up and you had people come out and inspect it as if it were any building that was built from the ground up and it had to meet all the codes and everything.
All commercial criteria.
Right, right. So, but I think what she's saying is if somebody's growing in their house, it's a little different. Maybe we need to come up with some distinguishing power usage, more than 3,500 kilowatt hours a month is commercial or something like
I
that.
don't think that's a good way to gauge it.
I don't think that's a way to gauge it, honestly, I'm not saying that either. Just-
All right, hey, all right. So please limit your comments to when you're called on. So the question now, I guess, becomes the applicability of what opt-in means. Okay. Have you found anything yet?
No.
Okay. All right. So please keep Googling. So, all right, where do we go from here?
Maybe we skip cultivation and figure out, we know we have to opt in on retail. We want to figure out some zoning on retail.
Yeah, I think we were in agreement on retail all across the board, but do you want to read through it?
And testing labs too also has to be opted by each town,
That's what we're gonna
Testing, yeah, so that one we have.
like processing.
So retail, just going across the ordinances or the zones, village was site plan review. We had retail and village residential as prohibited. Retail store and rural residential was site plan review. Retail store and farm and forest was a special exemption permit from planning board. Retail store and light industrial was site plan review. And retail store and public works as well as conservation both prohibited. So that's how we have it currently.
Do we have any questions about retail stores from the public?
Sorry, just one. It almost sounds from what you just said, you're anticipating retail stores every mile and a half in the town. Or am I misreading it?
No. So what he just read off was the land use of where stores would be.
But there's only one that we're addressing, I understand, right?
Yes. No, we're not addressing the store itself. We're addressing the ordinance.
Okay.
As a whole.
So my suggestion would be we focus on where there is perhaps the existing one and make it simpler for everyone to understand and if you have, hey, should we have it everywhere, et cetera, it can be more complicated, but part of the planning board's power and direction should be, this is where we feel it ought to be, so here's what we suggest.
So
And there should
that would provide a monopoly for one.
No, there's a lot of storefronts available, that's, it's not a monopoly, that's
But we're
absolutely
saying,
not.
we're saying that a retail store in village there could be 10 that exist in village zone.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
that's what we're
10
saying.
villages? Well,
No, I'm saying in a village zone, there could be 10 retail
So we're-
stores.
in
Potentially.
village zone.
So we're talking.
That's most interesting.
Right. So the land use.
Capitalism.
The land use. Excuse me. The land use table for the town
Yeah,
has a list of applicable businesses and different zones, land use zones for the town of Parsonsfield. Those are divided into village residential, rural, farm and forest. Now, when we enact ordinance for a specific type of business in town, we have to address each one of those zones and say whether it should be allowed or permitted, a conditional use permit, site plan review by the planning board, a special exemption, or prohibited use.
I think you also have the option to zero in on what might be more the commercial area as opposed to.
Right, and that's the light industrial. Right. And so to answer your question, we can't narrow the focus of an entire ordinance on the one business that has gotten approval. Yeah.
That's your words, not mine. I'm just saying the zone. Don't say that. I'm not supporting a single supplier or anything like that, any monopoly, as you said. I'm just saying, here's an area, and that's where it could be, and that would make your job so much easier.
That's what we're
That's
doing.
what this is. That's
All
what
right,
this is.
all right. I didn't
But
hear
we're
that.
just
quite yet
saying,
with all this.
rather than saying just a simple
Okay,
yes or no,
appreciate it.
we have breakdowns because, for instance, like village, you could just say yes, but we're saying Yes, but we as a board wanna be involved in the process as well. We wanna make sure
I
that,
mean, we know the villages, so we can,
Yes.
we can say, this is where we feel.
right,
I know you don't have a comp plan to go by, but, you know, as a
Right.
member of that committee that will be formed this Saturday, I might suggest you look at it like that, because that's kind of where the comp plan might go, is this is where we want these sorts of things. You know, whether, it's not,
I mean, if it's allowed, then that is, we're kind of saying that that's where we
yeah,
want to
I
do it
think-
now.
That's the
you know,
process.
we realize
We're
that you
engaging
guys
them.
are trying to do a lot without a higher direction, and please don't misunderstand my comments. But, and maybe I'm getting ahead of the comp plan thing, which, as you say, will take 2 years. But maybe to move this along and get to where I think the voting public is interested and wants it to go, it may be in everyone's best interest and the town's best interest to immediately say, in this particular area, what do you think, and go from there. It's not your responsibility to think for everybody. It's your responsibility to think of what's best for our development. That's the planning board nomenclature. So that's why I bring that kind of thing up, is perhaps you guys are making this way more difficult than it should be for the commercial aspect.
I appreciate your comments, sir. All right.
That's one thing, that's trying to have my hand for 5 minutes. How come nobody's taken into, like, account of any of the recreational recommendations that we had? Like, it seems like we had a pretty good comprehensive plan to go about recreational marijuana, and we were really vocal about it, and we had a lot of input. But then when it comes back to medical marijuana, you guys don't even want to go back off the feedback off of recreational marijuana. Like, if you just look off what we did a few months ago, that give you a pretty good basis of where your town is at and how they want marijuana in general when it comes to everything that you guys are trying to accomplish when it comes to zoning, permits, and how to permit, whether it's special exemption or not. Pretty sure we hashed this all out with recreational marijuana, so you could then kind of
I'm sorry,
reflect
are you
right here.
referring to the one workshop we had here when we wrote stuff up on the chalkboard?
Workshop and a public, there was a public
We had a
vote.
we didn't, no, the
Pretty
public
sure
vote was just a
public-
moratorium, there
Moratorium,
wasn't
right.
anything other than that.
Yeah.
There's no public
So-
votes for that,
so
anything other than
what-
just saying.
The planning board has done, so
Yeah,
the
but-
planning board, the planning board has done a number of workshops on retail, and because medical requires its own ordinance to be allowed in this town, that's why we're treating it as a separate
Well,
entity.
I understand what you're
Right,
saying
and-
separately. All I'm
And I
saying-
understand that
wait,
you're
wait,
saying
wait.
that we should
But
include
you're not
the
understanding.
comments from retail, the retail research that was done in those workshops, but in actuality, it's a separate thing. So for us to get the most accurate feedback about.
Of course, I know that it's separate, but it's recreational marijuana and medical marijuana. We're not talking about two totally different things. They're both cultivation facilities. They both run the same type of
Right.
business. I mean, like,
Yes, but we still have to go through the same process for both of them.
People have strong feelings about that versus medical though, and the town
well,
should
when it comes to like logistics, like where we should allow a cultivation facility or where we should allow a retail shop, I think most of that
So-
is pretty similar throughout the industry in general.
All right, I'm gonna start limiting comments now, because like,
Sorry, I'm on the
we're,
board.
yeah.
Sorry, one comment and then public input.
We're gonna take a 5-minute break. Please. All right, so we're gonna reconvene at 7:40.
Oh, I am probably 20, 30 years younger than anybody else on the planning board. That's why, so that's why I came, because we haven't even discussed anything at that all.
Really?
Really good question. There's no rush.
Well, so we have a new with the police chiefs.
You just mentioned.
It's going, yep, it's going down
Well,
here.
we spent months on what you should spend months on it. No, we spent, I don't even met the cookies, I don't even want that side, but.
That's not where I thought it was coming.
Spoke about, like, we had done all this research, we've done all this work, and then we get to medical marijuana, nobody wants to look back on it, you know, but it's very sound.
Yeah, I was trying to.
We might not find out tonight. It's like we're going on the same merry-go-round over and over and over, like the same discussions.
So it says expressly recognize the municipal home rule authority to regulate registered caregivers, registered dispensaries, testing facilities, and manufacturing.
I said it.
Except municipalities cannot prohibit retail.
So I think all of them are bringing in.
The state has paid for.
So that's the only one it doesn't mention here. is
Right. That's how it's same rule.
And then we got to the questions and answers.
So that's really what we want. You shouldn't have to say where it is. Right. That's how we determine what the right.
So,
When the Senate, the United States Senate is trying to figure out guidelines for the tech companies, they invited the tech companies to talk to the United States Senate, because the Senate can't tell the tech companies how to tech companies. They don't know. It's just asking for input, asking from the industry, because oil industry, timber industry, this is with every fishing, well, tech companies are in your home. Right, is it different or is it like that? Right.
right, and that's
Mike,
what.
or I coordinate.
Well, the first one, right.
Yeah, like, people are very different.
Time, baby.
I hear you on that. I don't, I understand why people are a little hesitant against that, but like, industry is industry, like, people didn't want to embrace pupils, or maybe still pulling horses buses. This is gonna happen either way. It's being legalized. What are you gonna do, hold on something? You're not getting your benefits out of the industry?
Probably could walk us here. We definitely want to adjust. Well, I think it's I'm Ken. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you, Debbie. We keep hearing about you.
Yeah, well, it's past the limit.
Heard all about you.
I don't wanna deal with it. Well, either
Yeah.
or that.
We were plotting a little bit,
These
maybe.
guys do the best they can.
Oh, yes.
You can't come to a meeting that didn't exist.
It still comes down to that state land, but you can't mail it, you can't.
Illegal to bank.
You drive out of state with it, it's a different situation. All these things have to be resolved to make.
Well, not
To leave it up to town review.
Yeah, that's the same.
Just like if I show my family and I just stand up. home rule authority to regulate registered caregivers.
Like all the
Yes, they use from the bar, wasn't regulated as well. I still think
So, we're gonna get started again, so we're looking at MMA's website, and I'll read for the public. It says, the medical marijuana law amendments, PL 2000, for LD 238, especially recognize municipal home rule authority to regulate registered caregivers, registered dispensaries, testing facilities, and manufacturing facilities that set municipalities not prohibit the number of caregivers. So, yeah, it does not address cultivation as far as what I see, so we'll take that out of here.
So that's kind of like what you're doing as a caregiver.
I mean, you can't be a caregiver, really.
Right, well, yeah.
Not a very good one. Care advice.
So I will follow up though, just to make sure that we're in the clear with the email to MMA, the legal department. I think that's a fair thing, just to CYA, and make sure that it doesn't throw a monkey wrench into things. So in order to keep moving along, thank you. All right, so, all right, I'm gonna keep on people like as they have something to put in. I just want people to recognize that the board only has the workshops and public meetings that we can conduct business. And in order for us to actually conduct business, like we need to be able to work as a board. So like the longer we have public input, which is valued 100%, but the longer that we do have public input, the shorter amount of time that we have to work. So please, with your comments, questions, make them short and concise.
And of course, all this is there's gonna be a public hearing.
Right, yeah, there is gonna be a public hearing. So no matter what we do, this is gonna go in front of a public hearing where we explain the work that we've done. The public will be allowed to talk till their face is blue, provide any evidence, testimonials, and we'll take that input in at that time. Okay? And then after that, this will go to a town vote. So nothing is being decided here tonight. We're just trying to work out the verbiage of what should go before the public hearing.
Which is obviously, important, because that's gonna be the pipeline for what gets voted on. So we want to try to get the language right so that everybody's needs get addressed.
Right. Mr. Ryan, you had your hand up.
So, when we did go for our public meeting for the moratorium, you'll notice the cultivation wasn't in there, the regional wasn't in there, the state level is because it's not something that should be addressed by this particular board or anyone else. It's not part of the OB 1539 opt-in. That also was an informal yes or no on the 4 things. So a general vote to rehash what we already rehashed with probably more people than we would see in another vote. It seemed to me to be kind of.
Okay, so I appreciate that, but I think that we as a board discussed that we're gonna go in and not do the 2-step vote. We're proceeding ahead with this once we can finally get to this. And as far as an informal vote, like it doesn't really apply to here for the formal vote that we're trying to craft.
No, it was a formal vote, it was recorded as.
You just said informal vote.
No, I mean the moratorium.
Right. So we're trying to work on what the formal vote will be for this stuff, okay? Yes, sir.
Quick, apologize for my ignorance. The information sheet that you folks circulated, is that available, I can download somewhere, or only that hard copy?
Which, the one that was passed around?
Yeah, yeah. Is that available anywhere?
It's a working draft.
Okay.
I was working on it a little bit before this meeting, so I'd rather pass it out once
Completely
it's.
agree.
It had a lot of,
Within the public hearing.
it's a lot of it was like, I think it was cut and paste, right? Or like fill in blanks.
Right.
There's actually like,
Yeah.
Well,
there's definitions that are wrong.
so
that we,
it'll
swap
be
around.
available for
It'll be available.
public comment or whatever.
It'll be available.
Whatever
and then
document
it'll be
is great is
discussed
public. So.
very,
Wouldn't
very
be available.
extensively at the public hearing. All right.
Beautiful, thank
You had your hand up, sir.
I was just trying to help him understand that we went through some of the zoning questions at the last workshop.
Okay,
And I
yeah,
don't think he was here.
right,
No, I was not, I apologize.
okay.
All right.
All right, so, the thing that we were first gonna address was cultivation facilities. We will, put a strike in that for now. We will email MMA Legal just to make sure that we're in the clear, but according to what I could find on here, it doesn't include cultivation facilities. So the next one was testing facilities. And the way that we had zoning recommended was for village, it would be R, which requires a site plan review permit from the planning board. Village residential requires a site plan view from the planning board. Same thing for rural. Farm and forest, there was debate between R and S, which is a site plan review and a special exemption permit. And then a P for permitted in light industrial, and then prohibited use in public works and recreational. Now, I want to kind of zone in and talk about what was contested the last workshop, and we'll talk about farm and forest strictly in regards to testing facilities. Now, can I see that one? I just wanted to give like the actual definition of testing facility.
Testing facilities, right
There
here.
you go. Can you read off the explanatory note?
Yeah, marijuana testing facility means a public or private laboratory that A, is authorized in accordance with section 243-A subsection 10 to analyze contaminants in and the potency and cannabinoid profile of samples, and is accredited pursuant to standard ISO, IEC 17025 of the International Organization for Standardization by a third-party accrediting body, or is certified, registered, or accredited by an organization approved by the department. And use, if passed, retail marijuana cultivation facilities will be permitted within the following.
Oh, so the testing facilities have to be accredited by somebody, is that right? Is that what that says?
Yeah, the ISO accreditation or IEC.
So, what would, we'll go one by one.
Are there any, out of curiosity, do you know, is there any testing facilities?
In Kennebunk,
Kennebunk, I know there's one in Kennebunk.
Portland.
Yeah, so
So right now,
we'll go one by one and just discuss whether you guys feel it should be an R or an S. Start with you, Brandon.
It's, hold on,
I
sorry.
have
Or
a-
a
I have a
P.
question just before, what is, like, your town, what does an R mean and what is the S?
Oh, that's what I was saying. R requires a site plan review permit from the planning board following a site plan review. So it has
Is
to
that
come.
like a conditional use permit or?
No, so what it means is instead of getting, well, it could result in a conditional use permit. That would be like the decision of the planning board at the end. But so if something doesn't meet, just you're allowed to do it in our town, it has to go before a site plan review, before the planning
So
board.
is that you guys, like, they come in and?
They would come before the plan, they would go to the code enforcement officer, they would fill out paperwork that describes both their intent, some deed paperwork, some hopefully pictures, and just a description of the business, as much information as they can provide the code enforcement officer. That application is screened by him to make sure that it has all the requirements for site plan review in it. And then it goes on the agenda before the board. The board will then review the application. It could be a minor or major review, site plan review. If the board chooses to, at the time, they can do a site walk. Following the site walk, they can do a public hearing. And after that, they can hold a vote whether to approve it with conditions, provide a conditional permit, whatever happens from there. Now, a S is a special exemption permit from the planning board. Now, it has to meet two things to get a special exemption. There's no alternate site which both is suitable to the proposed use and reasonably available to the applicant, or that an environmental impact report shows there will be no adverse, and that an environmental impact report shows there will be no adverse impacts to neighboring uses. Yes?
It's actually, when you get a special exemption permit, you're beholden to everything in major development also, so
You have to show that you can afford to do it, what your plans are, your steps to your plans. If you look at that special exemption permit, where it has two, it says it's also all of the following of the preceding standards. So the implementation for it, you have to essentially go through a major development type of application process. It's not just those two things, which includes divulging your, finances, your building plan, hiring an engineer, an environmental impact study. It's just so we know what we're putting for S. It's a little bit more than those two things.
That was, yeah, I'll go through and add, any of the verbiage I can find. That was strictly, from below the land use table, the definition of each thing.
Yeah, I think it's like page 93 or 89 or one of those two. I was looking at.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. So, any other questions about what a testing facility is, or zones, or how this works? Okay. We'll go board member by board member. Let's talk about what you feel it should be and why. Start with you.
Yeah, testing, we're talking about,
Testing in farm and forest.
farm and forest, yeah. My tendency is to look at it as it requires a, site plan review. So I think of like, what's a comparable thing for special exception that would, have a special exception requirement, which is pretty extensive. I don't know, what else can we, are there any other related, like, processes or, that aren't allowed?
In farm and forest?
Is there something?
Farm and forest is for low-density housing, farming, forestry, and other related commercial uses, as well as outdoor recreational uses. I wouldn't be opposed to saying not permitted in farm and forest. I don't expect we'll see a testing facility anyway, but we have to go through this.
So I
don't know if it fits into the character of farm and forest.
Okay.
Low-density housing, farming, forestry, outdoor activities.
So you would go more for a prohibited use than a special exemption permit?
I mean, I really am not committed either way.
Okay.
I just don't expect we'll see it, but we have to address it.
Absolutely, now, not later.
So your recommendation is?
Yeah, I don't know, it's,
I think we could overthink it. If a testing facility is going to come to Parsonsfield, odds are they're not going to farm and forest.
yeah.
So I've never been in a testing facility.
That's
You said that you've been to one?
No, I can't say I've actually been.
Okay. So I'm just wondering how big are they? How complicated? Like what kind of like?
Big, small scientific equipment. I don't think there's a big footprint. I don't think there's any, noise. There's really no issue with the testing facility whatsoever.
Okay.
I don't think there is.
So and what we've said is it would require a site plan review in village, village residential, rural residential.
And my industrial, it's just.
And just straight permitted.
Just go to the CEO and figure it out.
And so, I guess what we're debating right now, not debating, but like discussing, is farm and forest specifically. So, I get your saying that, well, the definition, farm and forest doesn't include testing facilities.
No.
What do you think a farm and forest is?
Right.
But it's specific to farming practice,
Agricultural.
agricultural practice.
Right. Now,
Just for the,
the argument can be made that they're testing an agricultural product.
Right.
That you are growing something and you're testing it for a sort of potency.
so just in the interest of moving this along,
Yeah.
let's say, site plan review. I mean,
Well, you move along, but, yeah, all right. You have a pretty strong opinion about it. I mean, I'm interested in hearing, I mean, I'm.
So you
I
said
think
site plan review.
Site plan review, but I mean, I can also, I can come up with an argument for why it shouldn't be allowed either. I don't, you know, I mean, it is because it's like an industrial process potentially, but it really is low key. I mean, it's not.
Okay.
Well, it's ISO certified, which makes it a very
Sir,
industrial process.
I appreciate your
Sorry.
comments, but I've asked that you please be
You got it. Go
quiet
ahead.
until you're called upon.
Yeah. So,
ISO certified.
So, well,
Yeah.
do you have anything to add?
I mean, I'm looking at it as it's almost a non-issue. I'm just saying, it doesn't really fit into farm forest, but it's not really you don't get any, there's no cons to a testing facility,
Right.
as far as I can see.
Okay.
There's not.
Nate?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any strong feelings either way for a testing facility, it doesn't seem to, have any detrimental to the surrounding area. I think the only thing is maybe for farm and forest, insightful for do site plan review, do we have a condition of, not being able to, a certain square footage for that zone or something, just if we want to keep it, again, more density into a smaller footprint, just make sure that at least that we're kind of baking in the fact that we're not putting a huge industrial complex in farm and forest, keep it like mom and pop testing facility.
it would be a garage, I imagine.
Yeah, exactly, and I suspect it'll probably stay there, but again, if it can be big, then, we just have to think about that.
Well, that's where, I mean, that's why I think there definitely needs to be some level of, either site plan review,
Again, I agree that I don't necessarily see someone going there, but if you do open the door and you just, hey, it's cool to go, and then all of a sudden you have like an Amazon-sized building, the testing, not to say it's gonna get like that, but, you have to think about every potential possibility, I guess.
I think we just call it site plan review.
I'm fine with that.
Sounds good.
All right.
Change it.
Alright, so what's next?
Next is manufacturing, tier 1, and
Farm and forest.
it's in farm and forest. So a tier 1 facility, actually, let me read these definitions. Manufacturing facility means a registered tier 1 or tier 2 manufacturing facility or a person or entity authorized to engage in marijuana extraction under section 2423-F. Now, I know you might ask, what does marijuana manufacturing mean? Manufacturing means the production, blending, infusing, compounding, or other preparation of marijuana concentrate and marijuana products, including, but not limited to, marijuana extraction or preparation by means of chemical synthesis. Now, a tier 1, and that's what we're talking about right now, a tier 1 manufacturing facility registered pursuant to subsection 8 may engage in the activities authorized under subsection 4 in accordance with the rules adopted pursuant to the subsection 10. That is a ridiculous definition. And may possess up to 40 pounds of harvested marijuana and marijuana in various stages of processing at any one time. So, in layman's terms, they can do chemical extraction or preparation, and a tier 1 facility can have up to 40 pounds of marijuana in various stages. Now there's
Almost any carrier.
there's some additional subsection things in here, which probably have finer details. I did not include them in here. So now the manufacturing facility, a tier 1, is a pretty low scale, small facility. And what we have so far that was not contested was under village site plan review, under village residential site plan review, rural residential site plan review. Under farm and forest, it was between site plan review and special exemption permit, and then in light industrial, it was permitted. So the one that we need to discuss is the farm and forest for manufacturing tier 1.
I mean, I would still say, I guess I would lean just, site plan review. Because, as we were discussing, like, a chemical process could be just sticking in butter, like that's technically a chemical process. You're changing one form to another. It's low key, you know, again, it's, I think site plan review gives us at least an insight of what's gonna happen, what their plan is. So that's the side of it.
Now, I agree. The only, I guess, thing that I play devil's advocate in my mind with is if we have something that's permitted within one zone, we as a town are trying to gear something, a practice towards that zone. You know, and the other zones, so we're saying it's permitted in light industrial. The other zones, we're saying it's a site plan review where it's authorized to. Now, farm and forest, if that is something that doesn't exactly stick into that zone, then, you know, it's.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't if you really read the description of farm and forest.
Right.
I mean,
Because if we are looking at like a bigger, possibly commercial facility, you know, talking about putting that in farm and forest.
that would be a tier 2 facility, yeah, but either way, if you really look at the definition of farm and forest, it might not be the best place suited for.
And I think that's where my issue is when you look at it, where you're like, okay, I'm just gonna drop this manufacturing facility in the middle of farm and forest. You know, that's where I see that it doesn't fit, but if I'm a farmer, I'm growing marijuana in farm and forest, why can't I take my finished product and do something with it?
Well,
you know,
now,
like you could extract honey or, you know, I'm just thinking, I try to always apply it to farm, you know, I don't wanna limit that farmer's ability to do something.
Because I think
on their own
facility,
property.
you know, you use the word facility, you think like a big building with like no windows and all that, but I mean, it could just be.
Your garage, your barn.
That's right.
and now,
You know?
we're not talking about telling a farmer though that he can't do something. What we're saying that would require a special exemption to prove that, number one, it's reasonable for him to do it
Absolutely,
there
which
as
is
opposed to
why I
somewhere
would go
else.
more on that's why I don't know, special exemption, that's why I would be more about site plan review.
Okay.
Because that's your opportunity to, whoever the planning board is at that time to say, you know, to look at it and
Right, if someone came in and wanted to put a big
square footage impact and really study the impact. I mean, yeah, somebody, I don't know, I mean, someone could go nuts, and yeah, you could build a giant facility and, I don't know.
So what about,
Lots of, yeah.
what about a square footage caveat on that? Would you guys be opposed to putting that?
Like tie into like size of retail spaces, things like that, you know, there's square footage, different.
Because I mean, that's my only concern is not
Mine as well.
Joe, like
Right.
guy growing pot wants to turn it into edible products and give it to his caregivers. That makes sense to me. It's the bigger stores that could be predatory towards our community that I'm concerned about.
Right.
So if we put a square footage rule in there, then.
To me, that's reasonable because
Yeah.
it doesn't prohibit the person who has that property in their farming to
And so-
do their business on the property without, you know.
What if it was like site plan review under, say, 2,500 square feet, and then over 2,500 square feet, it would be a special exemption?
Maybe we should, think about the number.
Well, I'm just an example, but not,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, actually, you can do it in a small area for extraction.
right.
It goes beyond your kitchen table.
You can't do it in the closet.
I mean, would you guys be open to that?
Yeah, that would address my concerns. But, you know, and I don't know if that'll, you know, obviously it's time for this all shake down.
Yeah,
See
we
what
have to
the
come up with a
concerns
square
are.
foot condition right now, but I just make a note here of that.
All right, I'm gonna limit,
I actually have a question
Yeah.
that might be like more to the audience. And as far as making edibles go, you have to be, do you have to get state inspection like you would for like your kitchen?
Of course,
Yeah.
yes.
Right, exactly.
Commercial kitchen.
Yeah,
You
commercial
have to
kitchen.
follow state standards no matter what,
Yeah.
even if you have a.
Yeah, and I meant specifically, I mean specific kitchen standards.
Yeah.
Like not
Yeah.
for cooking, just like you do for everything else. Yeah, I mean, I've done it, I'm familiar. Just want to make sure that applies for that as well. But I say done, I mean I got a kitchen. I prepared food and sold from once.
I'm gonna open up comments and questions to the audience, and please limit it to 1 minute. Okay, who's got something? Anything on this?
My only comment is, I'm not sure how many people are familiar with what ISO really means, but ISO means that you follow you register exactly what your procedure is. You could produce death at the end. Doesn't matter to ISO. You'll still be ISO certified, just as long as you're following the procedure. Or your yield could be 5% or whatever. I shouldn't have used the word death, that's really bad. And so that's my only, and I'm not trying to say it's a bad thing, it's an excellent thing. But if you're going to say we should, ISO certification is usually annual or, something like that. So just please make sure if you word something that, okay, we're going to allow this in because they have to follow ISO standard. Make sure there's some, follow-up with that. But again, ISO standards doesn't predict quality, it doesn't predict anything. It just says, this is what I do. I do the same thing every single time, day after day, batch after batch, year after year.
I appreciate it. Just 1 minute. Anybody else? Cool, we'll keep moving along. All right. So,
You want tier 2?
well, are we in agreement on tier 1? I mean, we'll work on the square footage of what a testing facility.
Yeah, but we're at site plan review.
Site plan review with some specifics.
Right.
Which may even probably go towards the above as well.
I mean, yeah, the testing facility, I mean, would that be something?
For me,
that-
that's my concern is I don't want, that would be my concern with zoning. It's okay, it's gotta be a certain size and then, related to maybe what's going on there. Not-
Right, yeah, again, so we don't have.
It's not, oh, there's some nice land out here, and, put a testing factory here, because we can. I mean, but somebody should be able to, I don't know, I think, include the various facets of their agricultural business, to some degree, obviously. I mean,
Well, and the other thing to take into consideration too is like the food sovereignty ordinance that we've kind of been talking about. That allows agriculture to do just that. To be able to process its own animals like on their own land and so yeah, I do agree. So the next one is manufacturing tier 2.
This is the one that was probably the most,
Contentious.
I mean, the only difference is the quantity of actual product, right? So there's no difference.
isn't there different methods?
Well, so I think it was
No,
chemicals.
I don't think there's any distinguishing between CO2 or, not that I saw in the bill anyway.
Do you have
Tier 1, Tier 2 is quantity.
the tier 2 there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought when I was looking through the statutes, it's something about hazardous materials that they're allowed to use.
Right, yeah, I think
So
that's
tier 2 is,
either one, right? Tier 1 or
well,
Tier 2.
I think tier 2 was allowed to use something that tier 1 wasn't. I'm spitballing here. So you have the tier 2 thing?
Yeah, I don't think it's a great definition. I mean, I don't know.
Right, that's- I pulled it from
the
the state statute, that's what I was saying, it's like having the,
Tier 2 manufacturing facility, registered pursuant to subsection 8 may engage in the activities authorized under subsection 4 in accordance with rules adopted pursuant to subsection 10.
so I think what I need to do is
And may possess up to
include,
200 pounds of harvested marijuana and marijuana in various stages of processing at any one time. So there's a lot of other subsections there.
so
Those need to be read.
I think
You
the
guys make a
subsection 4
choice.
definitely needs to be included in here, I'll get that in there
So yeah,
for both of them. So,
I don't have enough information though. I gotta write that down.
What we talked about as a board during the last workshop was village. We had each run the gamut. We had site plan review, prohibited, and special exemption permit for village. Village residential was prohibited. Rural was special exemption permit. Farm and forest was prohibited. Light industrial was site plan review, and then public works and resource conservation were prohibited. Now, I know that the concern when we first discussed manufacturing tier 2 facilities was the chemicals that that they could use and possible runoff issues and like danger issues and things like that. So that's where the concern was. Now, we need to discuss, I'm stating what was discussed during the last workshop.
I'm not saying
Okay.
anything, could you carry on?
Thank you, I appreciate your permission for that. So, what we need to do is discuss manufacturing tier 2 village, like, and I want to get a gauge of where each of us are at, and then kind of hone it in on what we can do to.
Yeah, I'll just preface it though, I mean, I want to bat it around and what's my ideas, I gotta get more info on the specifics about what's exactly what's.
I don't think it's any more dangerous than tier 1, it's just you're allowed to produce more. And if we look at this, they've got engineers that have to come in and check off on everything. So if it were allowed to happen, it would already have to be verified by an engineer. Again, I don't think it's any different than tier 2. There doesn't seem to be any distinguishing difference in what they've said in the bill here as far as what they use. You know, if you're using CO2 or butane or propane, it doesn't seem to matter the way they broke it down here. So that's the only thing that I see here is they're allowed about twice as much, not even more than that, 5 times as much product.
So, I guess what you're saying is you wouldn't be.
I don't think it's any more dangerous than tier 1.
So you wouldn't be you wouldn't support prohibiting it, but as far as like a site plan review or special exemption permit, where would you stand?
I think what Will said earlier about special exemption, he's right, because you have to, if you look at the special exemption, it says, in addition to the foregoing requirements, referring to everything for a major development. So special exemption might be a little burdensome. I mean, if you look at it here, it does get stormwater management, you know, I mean, runoff plan, the financial, demonstrate the financial ability. So it is a little intrusive. I don't know if we need the special exemption permit when
Or what?
site plan review.
But I guess that's not shying away any applicant, that's just making them provide more information.
Right.
For their application to the planning board.
Right.
So I understand it's more burdensome for the applicant to provide that data, but for the board, I think it gives more due diligence that, this is the right place for it.
And the site plan review is pretty thorough too.
Correct, but it doesn't have those same conditions.
Right. We can always put conditions on site plan review, right? You can always say, with this condition or that condition.
Well, we can approve it with this condition or that condition, but like as far as additional paperwork that we need to see, like, I don't know if we can vote an application not complete by not having that extra stuff. Does that make sense?
No.
Okay, so let's say during the application process, they meet the regular site plan review, just like for a daycare. Those document requirements. Now, I don't believe we can as a board, like, say, listen, we're not gonna vote your application as complete because we don't have, like a water runoff document.
Right, yeah, the
So-
things that wouldn't apply,
Right.
we would not apply, right? But that was just, again, there's other things here too.
Yeah, so, and
So, all right, so what are you saying, that you would prefer to see the special exemption with the tier 2, but not so much with the tier 1?
I need to do more research and figure out what the differences between the two, because like I said, during the initial conversation that we had when we were reading through the laws, there was mention of separate chemical use.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure that wouldn't be a concern.
Right.
That's my
So that's
thing.
another thing you just have to brush up on.
If the only difference
I have all your
is,
subsections, everything pulled out for manufacturing, the thing that you read, right here. Authorization for extraction using inherently hazardous substances.
I appreciate it. We'll take a look at it here since we're done talking.
I was just saying, if the only difference is just quantity, then I would be comfortable with a site plan review. If that's the
So
only
we
difference,
have to find
but I
that
have
out.
to.
I'm pretty sure that's the only difference, but we'll find that out, along with the cultivation issue for,
It was this portion, authorization for extraction of inherently hazardous substances. No, this was. because that's subsection 3 under marijuana manufacturing facilities. There's an actual printout that goes further into defining the 2 tiers. Yeah, I appreciate it. This was okay. We'll go to, yeah, we'll go to the audience and everybody's. All right, one minute, couple.
I was just kind of confused at how you guys can even set stuff up if you don't, like you said, it was the 40 pounds and under was allowed in the light industrial, but you don't even know what that means. Like, are you gonna be okay with that? That's a butane extraction? Or are you thinking it's okay because ethanol extraction or somebody making edibles? So I'm not even sure how you guys can put into place things without understanding what you put in place. Like,
Right, and we're not deciding anything, we're just discussing.
Hopefully not too far away, but pretty far away from that. Trying to just kind of get through, yeah, we're going to come back and get some more information on some of these things. Start to get a sense of it. And I think there are certain restrictions, or I don't say restrictions, but guidelines in place that allow us to do that, or allow any board to do that at any point along the process. One of the great things about having a review is that if it's got to be reviewed, then you don't have to have all the answers right away. You can look at everything on a case-by-case basis, as long as there's, rationale for it. So probably that's why, some of these, review is almost like an open-ended thing for me. It's like, it gives you the opportunity to address concerns or find out what do they use. Are they using butane? Are they using, how much?
okay, so
Yeah,
what you said it was prohibited might not be prohibited if you guys.
I think the only one that we've said prohibited so far.
I mean allowed, it was, the 40 pounds and under was gonna be allowed in the light industrial zone of Parsonsfield.
Correct, yeah.
If you do more research and stuff, are you gonna now take that possibility away from people who wanna do that in that zone?
But the difference
Well,
for.
this is for the people to vote, not for us to enact.
No, I know, but
Right.
the people should know what they're,
Yeah.
voting on, whether it can be a edible company or a butane extraction,
I think it is confusing, everything's listed under manufacturing, and we should have some way to distinguish, because somebody might automatically think manufacturing is gonna involve butane when it might not, it just might involve butter. So we do have some work to do on that end, but we're not there yet.
Well, and I would love to be able to provide that, but I think that that's a big part of what the public hearing is gonna be for, is to go through and provide explanation to all the voting members of the public, and have expert testimony on and from different views, now, yeah, I don't know how much literature we can include with this, because if we start going down the rabbit hole of exactly all the possibilities of each of these things, we're gonna have 20 pages.
Well, at least the hazard is the butane and stuff that's going to possibly explode should be talked about, and then all the others can be.
And that's what we were just discussing, is that we need to do more research to see what the hazardous chemicals are involved in both of those. So, yes.
Do you guys, as a planning board, plan to visit an extraction site of any kind to educate yourselves, or actually see what experts are working with, or plan to call in an expert to discuss with them? Because when you shout out words like runoff or explode, that gives a really bad perception on what it is these guys are doing, how educated they are. They're handling proper equipment that's been engineered for the exact process that they're doing. So I just think if we were to put this in other contexts, like I were to say, let's open up a gas station in the village, and then you were to say, well, what about gas runoff? I think people would laugh at that. And when you talk about runoff in the same sense, people are gonna laugh at that too, because if you know this extraction business and what companies are doing in extraction processes, there's no such thing as runoffs or things going down the drain. It's a very particular, measured process. Most of it is under vacuum, most of it is blow-off valves that are for safety purposes, most of them are engineered buildings that wouldn't be able to happen unless the state approved it. So a lot of your concerns are based off of no education, and if you guys actually went and tried to find out an expert and take that advice, because it seems like you don't want to take any expert advice from our opinion, and I I know there's been extractors in the crowd trying to speak up to speak to you, and I've seen them get shut down on multiple occasions. So I would advise the whole board
You
to
catch 1 minute.
educate yourselves, because it would only help you guys out, because like, you guys are really just thrown in the dark, and it's really, really scary to set up an idea of regulations when you guys have no idea of anything about the process. And grant.
All right, we've got a
Thank
little
you
bit of
for
an
your
idea, all right? We've got a little bit of an idea of what we're doing.
It doesn't sound like it.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
It might not sound like
you
it.
can agree with me that it doesn't sound
No,
like it.
I don't think he was very committed to the word runoff, he just threw it out there.
But that's
Stop.
bad
We
for
don't
public
need
perception.
everybody jumping on every missed word, all right? We're getting through this, we have an idea of what we're doing here. I don't even see what you're objecting to where we are now. We're talking about.
I asked if you guys are planning on educating yourselves, that's all I asked, and said it would be.
You did a little more than that. You've got an insulting tone about you too, Alex. Just let us get through this, all right? Every time you open your mouth, you're insulting the board. You're the Gerard Clarkson or Gerard Clifford of the marijuana
That's your
board.
perception, all I sat there and said, it's pretty insulting if he's gonna talk about runoff in a business he doesn't know
All right, so
about,
look,
man.
let's move forward.
Come on, it's all about perspective, I'm not trying to insult
So,
you guys,
all right,
I'm trying to
on
help
to
you
the
guys.
next question.
So real quick, I'm in the middle of setting up a lab right now, and the Attorney General will not recognize any of it as being safe. You have to have a C1D1 lab, not a C1D2 lab, because ethanol was supposed to be non-hazardous, but they aren't considering it non-hazardous. The Attorney General, you have to pass a state electrical inspection and fire code to have any lab. It has to be a blast-proof lab. There's a lot more to it. Please look into it.
Okay.
Can I
Thank
help
you.
you with that, guys?
C1D1 lab, you can look it up, C1D2 labs with ethanol, and you can call the Attorney General.
Thank you very much.
So you got no problem.
So I will say that that specific information is what is extremely beneficial.
That way you can just go right to the
Thank you.
source, get what you
Yeah.
need, that way there's no more of this he said, she said shit.
Right. Yes.
Would you like, I mean, I would gladly volunteer to help you guys research that. If you'd like me to prepare what's required for, testing, blah, blah, the chemicals that are used and so on and so forth, not a problem. I'm a chemist. I have a pretty good idea what's going on there and so on and so forth. So if that would help the board, because I know you guys actually have to work for a living and things like that besides all this, please, you know me, I'm here. If that would help you guys, I'd gladly take that task. And working with the people here as well, who are working on that.
We'll take it under consideration. I appreciate that.
Not a problem.
Thanks. Did anybody have any other questions about manufacturing two facilities? Comments, concerns?
So just goes back to that thing, that whole thing, if you're gonna have a C1D2 lab or a C1D1 lab in like rural residential and stuff, like people aren't gonna really want a blast-proof lab in their neighborhood. I mean, honestly.
Right.
So.
Burning off alcohol.
And I had to deal with the runoff and all the septic and all that stuff, I had to deal with all that.
My tractor pollutes more than
So-
anything. Sorry.
I mean,
I think,
the manufacturing we need to that.
Right.
More research.
and, okay, so here's what I propose to the board. I think that since we've nixed down cultivation facilities for now, we're gonna wait on some clarification from, if I can keep the comments down, please. Right, so we've got an agreement on retail storefronts for testing facilities. I think for manufacturing, tier 1 and tier 2, we do need to get more educated. I need to get more educated, I don't know about you guys. And I think that it would behoove us to bring in a non-biased consultant.
What do we need for that? We need a consultant for extraction?
Yeah, from MMA. From MMA, because their legal team has been dealing with ordinances in regard to this, and a lot further research. And so we can reach out to them, and we can get, I think it's worth paying.
Yeah, that's what we pay for.
Right, yeah. I mean, how do you guys feel about that? Brandon? Yeah. So I don't know what the availability would be. We can
You're
email
talking
them.
about legal, your legal advice? Is that what you're saying from MMA? Or MMA is gonna provide you somebody who's familiar with manufacturing facilities? Both.
Well, that's what I prefer. So the legal aspect, the legal team has been delving into the ordinances for other towns.
I think
helping them
legally we're on
establish.
solid ground, though. We're just trying to I don't know if we need legal advice.
Right.
Right.
I guess I would just not that we need legal advice, I would like to get a temperament for where other towns have gone with it and the reasoning behind it.
So maybe not legal advice, but just, you know,
And we're kind
Check
of
it, check
out
it.
in the front with this, so I don't know how many towns you can turn around and look at maybe larger cities, but
Yeah.
we're figuring this out. This is not, you know, we're not gonna be able to look to some of our surrounding towns and model it after them. We're out in front of them.
So where are we at with tier 2 right now?
Tier 2, I think we're back to needs more research, needs more education. So I can reach out to MMA and see if they have a consultant about the specific facilities, like the tier 1 and tier 2 and the differences in between. You know, I mean, that would be my first place to turn. Now, besides that, do you have any recommendations? Like,
No, I mean, it's so complex what the state's gonna do in your engineers. I'm really not afraid of the manufacturing facilities. I think if you do it with the site plan review, I think they'd be fine. But if you wanna get legal advice, or I'm sorry, get some kind of
well,
recommendation.
it's
not
not
about the details.
It's not about the business practices for me. It's about whether that business should be in that zone or not.
Right.
Because again, regulations are there, I mean, I don't care what you have, but there's regulations still about any compound or whatever you can imagine above ground.
'Cause I mean,
They have to
granted,
follow that.
the mill was a manufacturing facility of some sorts, but like how many other manufacturing facilities are usually in like a village zoning?
Village.
So, that's my question, I just want to get more education, so, I mean, we can reach out to MMA, and we can,
it's at least a start, and then they can direct us.
yeah, to go from there.
Ask them about the cultivation opt-in, or if that's an issue also.
Right,
But so for anything on tier 2, are we gonna jot down anything here, just kind
Oh,
of earmark to where we're at, like?
So what we had from the first workshop, which again is obviously not set in stone. Manufacturing tier 2 for village, we had the 3 basically, the site plan review, prohibited or special. Village residential was prohibited. Rural residential was special condition. Farm and forest was prohibited. Light industrial was site plan review, although I would be moving towards prohibited depending on what's going on there. But then public works and conservation were both prohibited.
You know, to me, it goes back to the whole thing, obviously, prohibiting something's one thing, but when you're putting in a review, it's like, that's your opportunity to find out the specific information about the plan, what they're gonna do, how they're gonna do it, to be able to see their compliance, or, how they achieve the compliance, all those sort of things. In the beginning, I don't want to say it's in lieu of having it all figured out, but it kind of is, because, you gotta figure out.
there's a difference between a site plan review requirement and somebody bringing in something that the town might not want, that still meets all of the check marks in that site plan review. I think that the Dollar General is a great example of like, I'm allowed to do this because it requires a review and I met all the check marks, whereas a big portion of the public was like, hell no, I don't want this here.
I guess for me, it boils down to, yeah, I agree with that, except, within certain areas, certain zones, less so.
Right. And that's the question that I'm going back to, is like, if we're opening it to zones, then like, we need to look at how stringent that is to control that process. Oh, I just want to make a point clear, like, so the board chair, my role in this board is to guide conversation, to call on comments, to maintain order and decorum during our meetings. I have no more authority in planning, ordinance, and in anything. I have the equal vote for all board members. I I know I get the finger pointed at me a lot, like, why isn't this happening, JP? It's your fault. But like, it's us as a board working together. So I just want to make that clear when I make recommendations to the board. It's to try and move us along, and everyone here has the same vote to either say, no, I don't want that, or something else. Just to clarify that. So I think we're kind of hung up on education for the manufacturing facilities, for that specific one. And I think it would behoove us to get better educated. Now, I'm hesitant to set a meeting for the next workshop without knowing what the MMA's capacity is to meet with us.
Do we have our, did we get our,
The recurring?
yeah.
Did that go in yet, Lindsay?
I'm sorry, what was that?
The next meeting, the workshop meeting?
The one that we.
It hasn't gone in yet.
Okay.
The one scheduled May 7th.
Yeah, but what I'd like to do is I'd like to try and get it done as soon as possible, because, you know, like, we're trying to work this. So, rather than waiting till that workshop to see if they could maybe come a half an hour before the scheduled board meeting we have next. That would meet the ad requirements. Unless you guys have any other ideas.
So that would be the 16th of April.
I think, is that our next meeting?
Is our next meeting.
Third Tuesday?
Yeah.
All right, let me take a few questions. Yes?
I guess I'm wondering, I mean, I have a full printout of LD 1539, we've all had it. We went through a moratorium vote on manufacturing facilities. You invited public speakers, I brought people that understand this subject. And I'm not quite sure I understand why we need an outside source, or why it's any different than an expert that's here. And what, just because you didn't see what you thought you saw previously, I don't really think that requires anything more. There's a definition there for tier 1 and tier 2. All the sections are right here. We've been waiting a long time. This is really dragged out. You know, you did I'm gonna invite all the experts. We didn't really get them. We did bring experts. Layman term can be allowed in. So people telling you the exact speculations around this, and then looking and seeing the only difference in the definition, which they would point out if there was a bigger definition change, is the amount. I mean, that's clear there. It's all there. That's the section. It's time to move it along, to at least put something down. Because if we do, we'll wait for MMA. First of all, MMA is not the state. We've had issues on
You said you
before.
guys did you guys bring anybody tonight? Because we didn't get any emails about, so we
We've
talked
had
about
people sit
discussing.
here and talk about the exact classifications and are building out these things.
Right.
Who to talk to and what it takes. And we've talked about this in previous meetings. So
I just, my question was, when we had the last workshop, you said like if you had anybody that you wanted to speak,
Right,
especially like expert. Yeah, I didn't realize if you guys brought somebody. I was asking if you did, and we would allow them to speak right now.
yeah, I mean, we're all cultivators.
Right.
We have someone here building a lab.
Yeah, and you guys have all been called.
I don't understand.
Right.
We have
Today's
all the
point,
knowledge here.
Yeah.
Last
And
meeting,
we keep kicking it
my
down.
tall friend, really tall kid, he couldn't show up, he is an extractor. And he tried to speak up last meeting about what was the major differences, and to be honest, you guys came at us as biased public. And I'm trying to explain, and you guys get offended very easily when I talk, but like, we've tried to give you guys information over and over and over again, and we get more rejected than we do get accepted. We're not a biased public, we're trying to tell you what we're doing, and like, we don't get perceived that way. I think, instead, I get people that get offended off of my comments when it's simply quite offensive to try and suggest what I know as an expert or what somebody else would know as an expert, and then it just gets rejected. I mean, I've seen it happen multiple times, so.
On this topic.
Yeah, on this topic specifically.
I will say that, you know, if this.
And then we had this gentleman here.
Hold on,
clearly
excuse
state
me,
the law.
I'm speaking. So if this were an ordinance meeting redoing the subdivision ordinance, and we had Nate Wadsworth's legal team in here giving the same expert testimony on building and what it takes to be subdivision, I don't think that would be perceived well by most of the public as like our sole information that we should be seeking advice from.
This person's not even.
And I'm not saying he is. I'm just saying like in generalities. Now, and I'm not saying,
Hold on, but to that point, like we've spoken to you weeks ago, we had somebody try and bring up information. I mean, nothing's come of that, you guys came back here today
right,
with the
so
same exact
I
question.
think
It's not
you're
like-
under
It's not like you've gone out.
I think you're under the understanding that between workshops, we're working on these issues and we have to work on them in public settings.
No,
You work
I
on
hear
the
what you're,
select board office, you go there on Tuesdays and you talk about them there. I mean, those things are happening, you're talking to CEO openly about these things.
Right.
You have the printed out law here that has definitions. There's literally nothing that you need that MMA can give you other than an opinion about what other people are doing, which is not the function to go off of opinions of other boards. It's to formulate something for our town. We've now been waiting, we've had plenty of meetings. You have the law in front of you, and you can't do anything other than say, I want a new committee at the opening, and then we need more education on this.
Actually, I didn't say I want a new committee. I want to make that clear. I said that members of the public have suggested
The
it.
conversation started in the selectman's office over the committee, you were the one there during that, so, I mean, I'll probably say that, I don't know what to tell you. But, that's what this committee is, you make land use, and you are elected.
I specifically said that I've gotten calls within the last week about establishing a committee, and that's what I was speaking to, not the select board meeting previously.
We
So
talked about it in that meeting.
it was talked about a long time ago, and I think at the
Sorry,
time,
still right.
my response was the planning board is working it. So we have been working it, and that's what my response is tonight, is I think we should push forward with the board that we have. And if you would rather like us just scrap this and it go to a committee, then
No one
we
has
can,
said
but
that. I
like,
literally said that your responsibility is to make land use.
right.
That is your function.
Mhm.
And it's very clearly laid out in your land use ordinance how to do it. And then you have the definition and all of the state law in front of you. And we're still thinking, well, we need to ask MMA what other towns are doing.
It's not about asking other towns what we're doing. We want to
Is that not what
see,
general trend means?
we want to see MMA's guidance and see if they can provide us more education or an educational expert on tier 1 and tier 2 facilities.
It's defined in the law right there, and you have experts right here. Layman can be weighed the same as expert from MMA. We've all learned that in a workshop together, the three of us.
Mhm.
That's what you've been getting every single time, and you've been turning it down every single time and running to MMA or running to something else. We are the ones participating. It's time to do the work. It's right in front of you. I can give you the whole printout. We've all had multiple versions of it. You have my old land use ordinance where everything was highlighted on how to go forward with this. I do not understand it. What is going on? The only difference is the amount. It's laid out in the definitions. Just because you haven't seen something that breaks it down by hazardous chemical, doesn't mean that you can go, well, I just can't seem to find it in the law, so we need to like extend this and kick it down the road. It's been too long.
I see that you're looking at me, but I hope that you know you're addressing the board.
I'm
And it's not,
addressing the board, but
Right.
you are the only one in select board meetings. Right? Have you gone to one? Have you gone to one? Have you gone to one?
yeah,
Is that function? No. Have they even empowered you to go there?
I'm
Have
sorry.
they said, go to the select board on our behalf? Because in the emails, it's not that way. No one is saying, go to the select board and have a conversation about marijuana. That's not happening.
I don't know what you're talking about specifically.
You
I don't.
can't just run off and represent the board on your own. They need to
I understand.
empower you to have that meeting.
So
And
if
it's not
I've,
happening in
if
the
I've
emails.
been at a select board meeting to talk about marijuana, it's been at the request of the select board.
Okay.
So
On behalf of
it's,
the board.
yes,
Have
As
they been
board
notified
chair.
when you go to these meetings?
yeah, we talked about it.
They haven't been notified of all of them.
Excuse me?
Yeah, Freedom of Information Act requests. We
Okay.
can look at the emails, they haven't been. Usually it's, I had a meeting with the select board. That's an issue.
Right, I informed them when I get requested of a meeting and I attend it.
After.
Right. It's
After
it's
the-
not as a board, hey, the selectmen are requesting me, can you guys vote for me to go and talk to them?
You should probably take some advice from them, considering you're the most party person out of the whole board. You aren't here for some of these meetings, yet you're
We
not
gotta
being
get
read
back
in.
on task here, we're off, we've got to talk about the ordinance. Excuse me, this is going.
It's about
off
being
the
on task
rails.
and getting the work done and putting it into the table.
Right, so, all right, so what would make you happy if we went ahead tonight and actually said, all right, we're gonna, without advice from MMA, we'll assign zones to tier 1, tier 2, is that what you're looking for?
You look at the definitions in there, tier 1, tier 2, and
Right,
then you put them into the board. into the land use board. It's really easy. It's exactly what they ask you to do
So
in the land use board.
what's the holdup here? Tier 2 is the concern. That's the concern. You want to get some clarification from MMA before we commit to any zones on Tier 2. Is that where we were?
I just want more education on what the differences are between Tier 1 and Tier 2 and how it applies with chemical extractions and any defining like dangers or hazards that might come with it.
Why are you looking for things? It's all in the law.
Sir, we're talking.
Shouldn't be.
I appreciate your comments, but if you can't wait to call upon, you have to leave.
It's also on there.
It's what?
Right.
Now, again, I'm one board member. If you guys are in a majority of a decision for one of these things, that I'm fine with that.
Right.
I just don't feel comfortable weighing in my vote because I don't have a good understanding of those, despite the evidence and testimony that's been out there.
Right.
I'd be interested to see what this gentleman here has.
Sure.
I just didn't want to be rude, that's all. So I agree with Mr. Ryan here about waiting for the MMA. I don't think that's a great idea, to be honest with you. There is other avenues. If you'd like to go see another testing facility, we can set that up for you to actually go put your eyes on one, see what it actually looks like. So you know what you're going to be looking at for a legal licensed facility.
I'd be open to that, absolutely.
Can you
And I
provide
do live here in Parsonsfield. I own property here in Parsonsfield, so.
Can you provide the materials and how much you buy and how much you release and all that kind of stuff? That's sort of
I
kind of
wouldn't
what
do it
I
through my
want.
lab, I'd do it through somebody else's, so it wouldn't be biased.
Yeah, but I'm just saying,
I
that's
don't
part of
want
what
any
I think
part
we're
of that. I
looking
will
for
set
is.
it up to speed up the
They can
process,
no idea.
as Mr. Ryan was saying, to speed up the process.
If
Because if we wait for,
can't do any work, like
So,
read the law.
The discussion here is like, if it's something that we're allowed to do, again, it's something I would be open to doing. I think that it's gonna require a little bit of research on our part to see if we can do it together as a board, because if we do it as a board with more than 3 members, it's a public
right, no,
public
but,
event.
yeah, no, that's good.
Which
I'm
would
just
be
trying
a-
to speed it up, trying to
right.
make it good for everybody, and so you guys have a better understanding.
Which would also, which would help, but also we would have to meet public notice requirements, which would require us to do it at least 2 weeks from now. I'm just
No, I'm just trying to help you over, that's all.
Yeah.
My hope, like for tonight, is that we just kind of hammer these out and put something down and then look at a target for a public hearing. Because we can have MMA, we can get information, we can get information and bring it to the hearing.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Just start getting that out there. That way it's, that's in the public, We just put these on a date towards it. So, and in that time frame, any one of us on our own can go see a testing facility if it's something, we want to do, which is, would be nice just because people are gonna have questions.
Mhm.
And that kind of always again, my concern is I cannot speak to these things. We've had testimony, and I could summarize poorly what goes all into it firsthand, but
Because if you're gonna have a testing facility, you have to have a hazardous stamp by the state from somebody that's certified in that, no matter what you have for a testing facility.
Right, and again, I don't think at least the consensus I've gotten, the board isn't that concerned with the exact specifications each of these guys need to meet, because it is state monitored and you do have to meet certain safety standards as well as fire inspections. A lot of this results down to land use. Is this the right type of business within this zone?
I agree.
if we want to clear up the only one that's potentially out there right now would be village manufacturing tier 2.
Now, where exactly is the village?
Keyser Falls and East
I was gonna say, I usually have a thing up there that has.
Where's our?
It's torn down right now. They're supposed to be renovating the room with our guys.
One's East Parsonsfield, and then the other is the village from the bridge down to the Dollar General.
Well, and it's just that strip too, because village residential goes right back past the main street. And that side is.
My thought is that honestly, You treat them the same, I mean, again, there's, if anything, you know, any process of any kind, there, obviously, when you get to certain volumes or quantities of certain things in the world, there's regulations on the change, the hazards can change in quantity, and there's regulations for that. You know, those are all, they're gonna have to, anybody who wants to, you know, you wanna get a certain size propane tank on your property, you know, you're gonna have to get, you know, an engineer to deal with that. You're gonna have to get permission from a lot of different organizations once it gets over a certain size, you know. You know, and that, you know, so like there's, again, all that to me, all those sort of things are built into it, so, and that's the difference, is the quantity. So I think, you know, looking at it, for me, it's like, yeah, it should be treated either the same as tier one, you know, treated the same as tier one. But I'm not sure that review is maybe the way to go. Maybe, I don't know if it's review or if it's conditional use, you know?
So,
but again, I think, you know, a lot of, like with any structure, there's square foot considerations to take, you know, footprint. I mean, because that directly relates to land use and the type of things that happen in a given area. Really relates to density and all that sort of stuff.
So, are you saying, and I don't mean to paraphrase this, but like, are you saying you'd be in support of a site plan review up to a certain square footage, and then it would be special exemption permit?
Something like that, I can see, yeah.
Okay.
And, you know, you have your opportunity to figure out what the issues are at the time of that given situation.
Rick?
I'm still looking at it as a tier one site plan review. I just don't see it. It's not more inherently dangerous than a tier one. It's just different quantities. That's all I see.
And how would you feel about the square footage thing he was talking about?
I don't know. It requires some research. We don't want to box anybody out by saying X amount of square footage and it's not enough for them. I don't think they need a lot of space. You know, it's not really. I don't think the square footage is a great identifier of what's going on.
How much is 400 pounds?
What related to like a
What was the
village
quantity? 40 or to 200?
40 to 200 pounds.
So it's 200 pounds.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you know, a CO2 extraction machine is awful big and it's gonna take up more square footage. Does that matter? I don't think it does. You know?
Is it probably the safer?
No, I'm also,
It's not.
I'm also
Yeah.
thinking about the footprint structure. Not mistaken, but, you know, relative to what it is.
I think the state is gonna be so involved in this that really there's not a whole lot we have to worry about. They're really gonna make sure these things are functioning properly. That's always, that's actually a foregone conclusion.
But I think
The worry that we have is, like, is it the right type of business for the zone?
Right. Now, it might not be great to go in the house next to the post office in East Parsonsfield where the village is, but I think a site plan review would prevent things like that from happening, because the site plan review is pretty specific and we have to hold it up to certain standards. So with a site plan review, it will only work in a few places like the Walkerville. You know, it's not gonna work in the other part of the other village down in East Parsonsfield. I mean, it could, but I'm just, you know, speculating.
But that's the thing, is like if you do, you know, do site plan review, it could go into your village.
Yeah, but it's gotta meet certain criteria, right? Like we go through and follow the site plan review, it's gotta meet certain criteria. I think the safety aspect is not really our concern. The state's gonna make sure it's safe. You're right, it's a land use thing. Site plan review would probably be enough, in my opinion.
Okay. Nate?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of, again, like I said, if it all comes down to just the quantity, then I would be okay with site plan review. However, saying that, we can put R now, I'm still gonna research more.
Yeah, sure.
In the meantime,
Sure.
you know, like, I don't know if because I mean, again, we're not putting anything in stone right now. But, you know, I, for my own sake, would like to research, my own research on it.
Okay, so you're comfortable with putting R, you're comfortable with putting R. Brendan, you're comfortable with putting R, a possible caveat in there for village. Now, since since we're talking about, well, I think the language you guys are using is it's just more quantity. Do you guys want to review the rest of what was talked about for tier 2? Because under manufacturing tier 2 for village residential, we said prohibited. Now for tier 1, it was R. And then
With the more
for-
quantity, you know, again, like I think about, you know, tier 1 with 40 gallons, like you could have someone's small kitchen. Like I keep going back to, you know, just kitchen, because that's like the, you know, I would say the least.
I don't, you know, I mean, I
But
wasn't
do you-
part of that discussion.
Right.
I would more tendency, have a tendency, you know, village residential to also be a site, no, site plan.
For tier 2.
Yeah.
I mean, that would also fall under one where it would have to meet certain conditions, you know, like if it is, somebody proposes it in village residential, but it doesn't meet the conditions of our site plan review, we would approve it, right? I mean, that's the idea of the site plan review.
But by conditions, like, we're talking about general things that they have to give, right? So like specifically, what would differentiate a huge facility going in from a smaller facility with our site plan review process? And I'm not disagreeing with you. I just want to talk this through to make sure that we realize the full implications of each of these.
Because last workshop, I was there, like, when I went through tier 2, we were thinking of it as being more hazardous. But you know, this gentleman was talking about having a blast chamber, correct? I mean,
Well, I mean,
blast room.
depends upon, yeah, you have to have a blast room, blast chamber, it has to be designed by somebody that has a hazardous engineering stamp. And they're not easy to find in the state, and they start at like 75,000 and up.
Yes, ma'am.
Just for quantity, to just give you guys something so when you're thinking about it, you can kind of weigh it against something else that you're already working on. As cultivators, at every harvest you have, you don't have to get rid of it anymore with the new laws. So everything that you harvest, you can keep. So potentially that number is like a number for the manufacturing facility, but like a guy next to something you might say could have less than 40 or something like that, could just be a grower and then not selling a lot of his weed or just not being able to do anything with it, and he could end up with more of it anyway. So they can have like as much as they want already if they're harvesting it off their own plants. So quantity almost becomes kind of like, yeah, you know, other than maybe the amount of business that that person might do, that would be something that might be able to be inferred from it. Like if they're doing 200 pounds, they might have more customers. Like,
And that would be a multi-use facility then, right?
I got a question.
Yeah.
So, or anyone else that does it, I would know, I mean, so quantity, like, for me, I don't really care if it's, I don't care if it's 20 pounds of marijuana or 500 pounds of marijuana. That's not the quantity that I'm concerned with, it's the quantity of the product, the materials that are used to process it.
If you're using 40
So how
pounds
much,
of marijuana,
what's a load?
butane, you may put 10 gallons in with it, you know, and you're gonna recycle it, reuse it. Hopefully you're not some of the persons that just put it out in the atmosphere, but even still, you know, I mean, they're still gonna use 10 gallons or maybe more, you know, you buy it by bulk.
But how much, when I think of quantity, I mean quantity at a time, I'm talking batch, because I know that's what makes the difference.
20-pound chamber
You know,
at once.
you're doing 20 pounds at once, obviously if you do 100 pounds at once, you're gonna use more.
They set them up now so you can run 7 right in a row, and use 7, 8, 10.
Are you talking about pounds or cycles?
Right.
Cycles instantly.
Okay.
Once one's down,
Right.
you recirculate it, start the next one. Once that one's down, 30 minutes later, start the next one. 20 pounds at a time is nothing.
Right.
Not nowadays.
And again, it's the corresponding, compounds that would go with it. That's what I'm talking
The
about.
butane, the propane.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're saying you could easily do 140 pounds in a day? Yeah.
As a machine.
Okay.
With the right equipment, of course you can. You can do 300 pounds in a day.
And
With
again,
one machine, one machine that's the correct one,
What I'm
honestly.
saying is, even if you did all the cylinders, each one only uses 10 pounds of
of particulate of
Right.
butane at a time, so it goes through it. They recover it, make sure the numbers, the same number that went in, so they got everything back, they're close to it, and then they put it to the next one, get it back, to the next one, put it back.
That makes sense. I was just trying to reference
So
it
you may-
within the 200-pound limit.
But I also stand like from a larger facility, you might be using 10 gallons or whatever, but you got 100 gallons out back too.
Correct.
Right.
So that's gonna be in somebody's backyard too, that's the other.
That's what I'm coming from. I don't really care how much weed someone's got sitting around the house.
It's not the weed, it's the
That's not-
flammable stuff that the Attorney General cares about.
And so like, I know when I throw out the term, it's more dangerous, I know me, it's more dangerous because there's more weed, it's more dangerous because potentially like, but again, storage and use of all these chemicals are all regulated, but at the same time, that doesn't mean.
They're supposed to be regulated, they don't have enough people to regulate now.
I mean, I've had to deal with, in part of my work, I'm getting at, I mean, when the Days put in that, they're killing. I mean, the size propane tank that they put in to run it, I mean, that involved, because it's their property, and people don't know this, is actually located in 2 different towns that required review from 2 different fire departments, the engineer was involved, a lot of people did sign off on it. So I mean, I'm okay with that, but again, it's where do we, boils down to where do you put these things? I mean, I don't care if anything's been certified safe, doesn't matter to me, there's still, most plan, town land use planning tries to put certain things that have potentially hazardous, in certain areas.
Light industrial.
Yeah, like, exactly. And so, yeah, and that's what I guess, well, at least for me, just to clarify, and to my colleagues also publicly, I mean, that's what I'm thinking about. I'm not, yeah, just because it's more weed, that to me isn't like the difference I'm concerned. It's like, all right, well, what are we bringing into the community?
And to that point though, it's probably not any more dangerous than having a propane tank on your yard.
Or the village variety.
Probably, but again.
Really, that's what we're talking about. These
Well, we are, but that's,
fuel tank.
but it is, but quantity matters.
Right, we're talking
Quantity matters when
we're talking
when
a 100-pound tank for
Yeah.
a really large extraction facility. I mean,
And that's what I'm talking about. So like, are we talking, what are we talking? Are we talking domestic use, or are we talking, 1,000-gallon tank, 1,000-pound tank?
No,
That's a big difference.
Listen, wait, hey, listen, order please. So if the board member is speaking to somebody
That's my question.
please leave it at
that I'm
that.
trying to clarify.
you could do
Can I-
even less than a 100-pound tank. My whole point is that it's not any more dangerous than a regular propane tank on somebody's house. It really isn't.
It isn't, and that's not what I'm trying to say. But what I'm asking is, is that what we're looking at? Are we looking at a regular old propane tank on the side of someone's house? We're looking at a, one that's 10 times the size, but that is different.
Right.
The one on the side of someone's house would be the one you use for the big boys.
Yeah.
I have a 1,000-gallon propane tank getting delivered this week, so I don't know, and I have a butane tank too, so I don't know.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. That's a little different. I mean, even a 500-pound tank.
So,
but
just specifically, like, did you pick that tank for?
So to run my whole operation and the lab.
Right, and just longevity, like, so you don't have to fill up as much, or is it required, do you require that for what you do?
No, I bought my own tank so that you can price search for propane price. You don't have to, if you own the tank, you can search for price.
Do you use
But,
it for CO2 burner?
yeah.
Yeah, so use it for a burner for growing, right, which is.
You can use it for CO2 burner, you can use it in the lab, it's a million uses. I have a commercial kitchen in there and everything, so.
That's why you're such a big tank.
Right, it's not for these.
But it's for the facility, I mean, it depends upon what you have, and I don't have a big facility, so.
But again, like, so, we've kind of gone back to manufacturing tier 2, the review site plan for review for village, which does allow light manufacturing. But again, when we're talking about where do we place these things in village residential, do we want a potentially 1,000-gallon tank sitting next to someone's house? I understand it's not necessarily more hazardous.
It can't be. It has to be a certain distance. There's a certain distance that tank's gonna have to be from any structure.
Right.
Depending on where it is, and if it's anywhere near the corridor, it's gonna have to, there's berms, there's walls.
So that'd be through the code enforcement?
That would be through.
They could be treated like a propane.
I mean, it's DEP, depends on the size, but the bigger it goes, the more people get involved.
Right, so like if we put site plan review for village residential, I mean, what is that review process as far as like, you approve it and all of a sudden you get started and you're like, oh, yeah, no, you can't do it. Or anything like that, like, is that now on our ownership to?
Well, and that, like I said, that's one of those details that I have concern it's gonna be regulated, so I guess we look at your practice then, you know, what's your practice? Like, is it formal light manufacturing? If it's formal light manufacturing to me, then it should, you know.
But, you know, village residential would not be like manufacturing.
Well, then,
Yeah,
and so that.
neither is rural residential, to be honest.
Right, so those are so those are arguments that I can,
And previously, we had special exemption for rural residential.
We did, yes.
Yeah. The only thing that we had definitive, like, open just for site plan review was light industrial.
Yeah, farm forest was pretty good.
I mean, obviously, you know.
So, the question goes back to is, you know, that the comments were that it's just like tier one, but it's more quantity. There's no reason not to have it in village if we have it for tier one or tier two. Do we want to revisit the tier two line to rediscuss these things, or do we want to just go with it as we've established?
Which is what did pretty much site plan review for everything. You said special exemption for rural residential, but I don't think we should leave it as special exemption for rural if it's site plan review for village residential. Again, you know, the state.
It's not for village residential, it's prohibited in village residential.
Tier two is?
Yeah.
Like I said, that's what we had as far as.
Yeah, that was what we had previously. So the question is, do we review it at all?
Again, but that would also prohibit somebody from having a kitchen where they could have this much stuff. Doesn't that fall under?
I know.
Does it? It's manufacturing.
The hard thing is that when it comes to marijuana, they lump all that stuff together.
Yeah, under manufacturing, so.
If you treat it just like manufacturing, then I would say, hey, you've got to limit it in different places because it's manufacturing, but, you know, it's,
if you're cooking, you know, even putting it, I guess I kind of look back at too, you know, like a brewery, you know, like you can't put a brewery in village residential. Even the smallest, you know, you can't put a brewery in rural residential. Again, you know, it takes special conditions for all that stuff. And that's something that's like tried and true, like everybody knows about it, everyone's comfortable with it. Talking about something that, you know, is new and, you know, I'm just saying, like, you know, just putting that out there is like if we're looking at it as a manufacturing practice, you know, a brewery is light manufacturing. It can only be in a village or light industrial.
But a brew pub is in plenty of villages.
In villages.
Yeah, in village, yeah.
But you can't do it in your
Right, yeah.
But I think.
So that's why I'm just going to this, like, as it stands right now, you've got site plan review in village. So if we're going with the brewery analogy, you know, that makes sense there. It's no in village residential, and then it's special exemption permit in rural residential.
But I don't think it should even be that, it should be site plan review, again, because it covers so much, it covers.
I would agree that rural residential could be a site plan.
Right, I mean, if it covers other things, other than just extraction, under manufacturing.
it's hard because, you know, I find myself over-interpreting, you know, trying to like break it down, but it's.
But again, like to your point, you know,
law,
they've lumped it all into the word manufacturing.
Yeah. So that's, you know, that's where I struggle with.
Maybe as we get down to it, we can draw some distinguishing, you know, things between them as we move forward.
Well,
And, you know, if you're just working with butter and coconut oil.
But that's what I've been doing in my head, and I'm trying to decide if that's the right approach or not. That's where I struggle with, is that the right way, or the way to look at it, is it was, you know.
And correct me if I'm wrong too, like, so caregivers like having home-based businesses, you know, are gonna be able to do this from their home, right? Aside from the land use that we're doing, out of the house.
Right.
And so what we're talking here specifically is about a commercial enterprise, or commercial thing, that they're actually changing the use, or requesting use to do this special business like on their property. And I mean, like, I know that people make butter, people make like oils and do that stuff out of their home kitchen, and it's fine. I mean, that's part of manufacturing. Some people do extraction out of their homes, you know, and that's covered under the caregiver stuff. Now, when we're talking about commercial entities, you know, we're not just talking about like somebody doing it at the side of their house in rural residential. We're talking about them building or converting a structure to do it specifically.
And they would have to follow all the guidelines to do that, all the, you know, all the building codes and then all the state guidelines and then our site plan review.
Yeah. Well, and no, I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm just saying to the point that, you know, we're talking about, well, you know, like it's just like cooking butter and stuff like that. It's a little bit different than somebody doing it out of their home kitchen.
Yeah.
You know?
No, and then you speak to the point where then that's the, I try to, it helps me zero in on that actually, because that's, you know, it's that application. I mean, it's not the actual activity, it's necessarily the activity itself. It's the whole, I mean, you know, land use part of it wraps up, involves the scale and size.
I mean, even a farm has to get like permitting and approval to open a farm stand on the farm, you know, like.
Not anymore with our food sovereignty ordinance.
We're
We're
never
working towards
employed.
freedom in that regard, let's not get restricted. You know, we want to be free in all regards.
I'm just saying according to our ordinance right now. So.
That's the other meeting.
Yeah. All right. Well, what do you got?
There are some provisions for home occupation that have some pretty interesting guidelines. I think it's like 25% or 500, which is greater. It also gets into not disturbing the character or the primary use of the structure, so.
I was reading that earlier.
It's an interesting take on the idea of somebody's like home operation.
The definition is pretty minimal.
They say you can use 25% of your home.
That's what I was looking at about 20
Anyway,
years ago.
it seems like the intent is essentially to make sure that nobody leaves a dwelling, like, not a dwelling when they're done with using this place, if they were to move, that it isn't a lab in a house. You know what I mean?
So, but I don't think that, so that 25% rule, and I mean,
No
you guys,
more than 500 square feet.
well, I mean,
Or 25%, whichever is larger.
right, so that doesn't change the primary use of that structure
As a resident.
as a resident home, right? And what we're talking about here, when we talk about these facilities, we're talking about specific buildings that are doing that use. And that's the only clarification I was trying to make when he's talking about like, well, people cook butter out of their kitchen. It's not, we're not talking about home use, we're talking about actual commercial applications.
I was trying to help you find a definition that changes the two.
Oh.
And that kind of opens up what home occupation looks like compared to an independent, or actually in-home occupation. I think it may even say
It's gotta be-
piling in an accessory structure also might be in there.
It says, you know, home occupation, this is what's in our ordinance.
Yeah, that's the one.
It says, an occupation or profession which is carried on in no more than 500, this is where it gets weird, 500 square feet or 25% of the floor area of a detached, single-family dwelling unit by the full-time permanent occupants of the dwelling and no more than 2 non-occupant employees on site at any time, which is clearly incidental and secondary to the use of the dwelling for residential purposes and which does not change the character of the neighborhood. The term home occupation includes both professional and personal services. The 525% thing, the way that's worded to me is a little, doesn't say whichever's larger, Rick. It says 2 different things and it's, yet another one of those things in our ordinance that we're gonna. What's that?
Whichever one was better.
It does say that one, it's weird.
It just says, yeah, I mean, unless someone, unless it's been redacted.
So, you had a comment, sir? Oh, okay, I thought something, oh, you did.
No, when you use the analogy for like making butter in your home, like even that truly is illegal because you have to have a commercial kitchen license. So you can't even make butter in your kitchen legally because you're gonna be selling it unless you're making it for yourself.
Right, that's what I was gonna
So I mean, then it becomes a commercial entity no matter what, so even butter's a bad analogy. I mean, I'm not saying it, you know what I'm saying, just because I don't want them to think that it's okay to do one thing and stretch it over the next.
So, going back to this.
So we got anything in this column yet?
So can we start over?
No, wait.
So, the question, again, is, since we've discussed tier one, and we've agreed on those, we've gotten through that. Now, tier two is, do we revisit each topic, or do we go with what we've got right now? Do some research, and then like at the public hearing, take in what public opinion we have, and then make revisions from there? Or do we continue like discussing each one of these things? I'm open to either.
Well, I mean, we're discussing, well, let's get them nailed down. I mean, you know, this can all change, and obviously, if, you know, we need to have something, well, that's, you know, I don't want to just throw anything out there, but it should be something fairly solid, so that it can be debated publicly.
Right.
You know?
Well, and really, we're down to one land use right now. So I mean, I think we've made progress over the last two workshops. Definitely, I think if we nail this last one down, then we can translate this into some finalized drafts of the vote ordinance, and we can use that at the public hearing. Yeah.
And obviously, I mean, we have to have some structures that we can, you know, all ideas that. So certainly be open to making changes and alterations after public hearing.
If you want to nail this down, it looks like we're through village residential, rural residential with site plan review, I think that's what we're not doing. So we, farmers forest.
So what I still have here, and again, like, maybe I missed it, but, manufacturing tier two, site plan review for village, for village residential, we had prohibited.
I think that if I were to buy a residential home in village residential, I mean, I would expect either home-based businesses rather than commercial businesses to be my neighbors.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with it. I wouldn't push for village residential.
Well, I rent my workshop space for that same reason.
I mean, you know, many of those things could change if you learn something else, but
not sure.
Okay, so
it's not to be stuck on this one.
village residential were prohibited.
Sure.
Rural residential, we had special, but I think we were changing that to site plan.
Site plan review would probably be more than enough, in my opinion.
I'm okay with that, as long as, again, after the research, we confirm 100%. Not saying anyone here's not giving us the
Well,
truth.
I mean, none of that, but I mean, after about a year.
Right.
Yeah.
So, all right, so cover review.
We got to have something to be heard of.
Farm and forest, we had as prohibited.
I don't know, I mean. we
Again,
just-
that was based off of, if I would, was to say, it was based off of the idea that it's more hazardous, so, we don't wanna have it out where like fire department can't get to it and other things, but again.
And I think too, it involves other things, even like a packaging facility. So if we're just automatically thinking everything under manufacturing is extraction of butane and propane, it's not.
Right.
So if we say prohibited in a certain zone, it eliminates other things for people
But going
also.
back to the farm and forest purpose.
Yeah.
Again, for me, it's like, I think, I have to stop interpreting the law the way I want it to be. And thinking, it's just hard to compartmentalize something, and it's not compartmentalized. I mean, manufacturing's everywhere, right? So I just want to make sure that what we're doing is consistent, and that's why I struggle, because it's like, well, yeah, it shouldn't be really, this manufacturing should be allowed in a lot of places, but it's not just manufacturing, it really isn't. So I just want to make sure that, I just want to make sure that'd be my explanation to somebody else who came forward and said, well, if we said we could do it here, but you couldn't, and they wanted to do something else that was manufacturing, it's like, well, I don't know. I think that opportunity to be left open, because it's such a broad definition of what manufacturing within medical marijuana it means,
I would be inclined to say site plan review because it does cover so much, and we can always get advice if you plan on calling MMA. But again, it covers so much.
Yeah.
And if we have to figure something out in the future, saying, separate it in some way, maybe we can. But I think for now, I'd like to say, at least me personally, I'd do a site plan review.
Yeah. So, and the restriction that we had for tier one facility was a square footage thing, and I don't see like why that shouldn't apply to tier two. Because, we're talking about the same concerns of like an actual commercial entity moving in as opposed to like a one-stop business doing multi-facets of processing and manufacturing with marijuana.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
I mean, think of, you know, on the
I'm
last
open
thing,
to
but
it.
when we were
You
talking
know,
about,
it's kind of good.
when we were talking about the rec side of it too, like, I remember us talking about how, like, one of the conditions for farm and forest could be, you know, you can do the manufacturing, however, it has to be like from your cultivation, if you will. But then again, we, you know, recreation, there wasn't the plant permit that was, I would guess. So that's why we're trying to kind of keep that as like a smaller size. But
I think that's all we can hash out, and I think, you know, it'd be good to have, you know, thoughts on it, public hearing, so that.
site plan review with the square foot condition to be determined later.
This name.
Alright.
Light industrial, we had site plan review. For tier 1 though, we had P, which is allowed.
Permissible, yeah.
So do we want to just,
Sure, we'd like to encourage it
Yeah.
in there.
I'm fine with changing it from R to P.
and then public works and conservation was both prohibited.
Any objections from the board?
So thank you for sitting.
Questions, comments, concerns from the public?
No?
Okay.
No? Serious?
We're out of breath.
Okay, so,
All right, so where are we at for, like, where we're at now? We got everything, we've got something, got the boxes filled for,
We would, at this point, we would need to schedule a public
I
hearing.
mean, that's what we're at, right?
yeah, so moving forward, what we need to do is pick a date for the public hearing.
A quick question, just, and because I can't remember, we haven't done this for a while, but we're good to set public hearing dates and have workshop? Is it still?
No, we can set other dates at a public hearing, I think.
Say
that again?
I think at a public hearing, you can set, I believe you can set dates for other, like you can set dates at a public hearing, I don't know if you can set a date for a public hearing at a workshop.
Sure, as long as it's put out there, as long as they see it in the post office and circulars.
But I think we have to make a vote as a board
For what? For a public hearing?
to set the date. No? I'm not sure, no, I don't believe so.
I'm just
Okay.
Is that what the
checking the
change?
boxes
Yeah.
and Dottie asked me.
I don't,
My
yeah,
biggest concern is that whatever we do, that it's spelled right, the dates
So-
right.
yeah, that'd be nice, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, because we have a quorum here,
Right.
and we're conducting an official workshop, I don't see any qualms with us
Setting the date.
setting a date for the
Yeah,
public
time.
hearing. What do we got? At least after the 16th, right? The 16th is the next Tuesday, or what's 2 weeks? Today,
16th is
Thursday?
our next, planning meeting. So we would basically, the first would be the cutoff for our first one. 8th would be the cutoff for the next one, so the week of the 15th, which includes our public, our meeting. The first week we would be able to set a public hearing.
Yeah, why not?
What's the date you got?
Well, I'm just saying, the week of the 15th.
Yeah, the order.
The week of the 15th would be the first week we schedule a public hearing.
So,
The 16th is a,
yeah, why don't we
We'll be
do,
able to get right to work then.
listen, why don't we do it on the 16th at 7 o'clock?
Wait, no, the 16th, that's our meeting.
I understand, and then we'll bump the meeting time to pass the public hearing, so we get this done with.
Midnight?
oh my gosh.
Bring your pillows.
Yeah, bring pillows and
Well,
blankets.
hey,
What about
do you have any agenda items for the next meeting? I haven't seen any.
No, I don't unless you guys come up with any.
Oh, yeah, just wanted to.
So they, right, so, but the cutoff was 2 weeks from,
Go to bed early that
the
night.
cutoff is like the 4th, right? For somebody to submit something?
Why can't we do it the day
So,
before? I think it makes
so
sense.
the cutoff for
Day
the
before
first
is our meeting.
submission would be April 1st. The cutoff for the second submission would be, because it has to be in on the Monday, correct?
Yeah, by noon.
By
yeah.
noon. So, yeah, the 1st of April is the first, 8th of April is the second cutoff, meaning that issue would come out on the 10th, which means the next following week would be the first week we schedule.
What about like a 5 PM public hearing and a regular 7? No, can't make that.
Yeah, not, and I think,
I
Andy,
work till 5 in the morning, so.
I'm okay with the 15th. I was hoping we could just combine it because we don't have any agenda items for
Which
the.
we do. It will be to address the concerns from the prior night's public hearing on medical marijuana ordinances. How about that?
That'll work.
And I just like that
I
goes
mean,
back
just-
to back. I don't wanna be here till 2 in the morning.
Me either.
Yeah.
I got a form of There's no way I'll be awake by then.
If we can hammer out the public meeting, you know, because, and that way we can focus on that, and the next day, boom, we get right on.
I'm just throwing this
So-
out there too. I mean, can we not do that? Would we not want to do a weekend for public hearing? Do weekends not work for public?
I don't know. When was the last one?
We did Saturday,
I think we
Yeah,
did
we
a
did a
Saturday.
Saturday.
point.
and we had a good turnout.
I mean, I'm just thinking like if we want a good turnout, like
Yeah, maybe.
personally, like
Yeah,
it's
we
hard to
wanna
get
do it
here
on
after
Easter
work
weekend.
sometimes, you know, so.
I think, did we do it at 9 in the morning? 9 or 10?
We didn't do it in the morning. I mean, you're just giving up a Saturday.
Right.
I think the last one was 10, because we had a
There's,
walk you to walk.
I think Todd was complaining too about doing it so early because we were trying to do that sidewalk early. They ended up not showing up.
There was a
Yeah.
big thing.
So I mean, you know.
Yeah, you know what, I think let's.
What's the Saturday following the 16th on that weekend?
Well,
Yeah.
can we wait? So
Easter's 420.
Oh, is it Easter?
Yeah.
Easter
That's my
weekend.
excuse. There we go, thank you.
So nobody may be around for the 20th.
Yeah.
So it's all right. So if the second placement in the ad is on the 10th, could it not be the 13th?
Does it work?
All right.
All right,
So
so-
here's where we are.
Yep,
First
Spell it
cut.
right.
Got it.
Word.
So it'll come out on the 3rd.
Right.
That's notice 1.
yep.
Right. Second one gets placed on the 8th. Comes
Yeah.
out on the 10th.
We can do it on the 13th.
So Saturday the 13th at.
I think,
I mean, I'll be up at 3 a.m. So let's do it.
I'm okay with 9 o'clock, 9 a.m.
a.m.
You guys feel good about that?
Nice, good. I think
I-
it's better
Sounds
10
good
to
now.
like 10.
It sounds great right
If I get a better
I just don't want people to burn up their whole day.
Yeah. More people
Hold on,
be
hold on, let's-
wanting to come
so-
up, like attending it.
So-
I like 10, I like the casual
10?
start. Yeah.
You prefer 10? All right, we'll do 10.
Marijuana ordinances.
4:13.
Take your time.
Public hearing. So,
Dave's not here, man.
all right, now, in the interim, I'm gonna research, what the requirements are, or the public notice requirements would be if we were to, attend an extraction facility as a board.
I've got, well, I was just gonna.
And I was gonna say individually, in the meantime, if you'd like to, as a board member, you're more than welcome to get with this gentleman and accept his invitation.
Or anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want.
Yeah.
Can I speak that?
Yeah.
That's why I have this blank piece of paper here, for that reason. If you are someone who has something you wanna show me, I'll come look.
Field trip.
But I'll be contacting you until we resolve that. That's why I just wanna make clear that I'm gonna go by myself unless it's all kosher. Just because I think it could get a little squirrely if we all went. Public meeting, travel, we'll have to get a school bus or something. Start driving around different facilities.
Well, you had, what, 4 people?
Well, the whole group.
Jump on the cannon bus.
Yeah. So yeah, if anybody does, I would appreciate it, so get your info, right? I'll call you.
In addition to that, I encourage each of the board members, if there is some education that you do want, it's lacking, please do it before the public hearing. I'm also gonna reach out and just see if we can get anybody from MMA to support at the public hearing. Now, I do not want to moderate this public hearing, so
Oh, no, we'll be the moderator, we'll have to moderate.
we need to find a moderator.
We know, I know. There's like one, like, it could quit as anybody. There's like one regional moderator, I mean, come on.
Now, I will say, that in fairness, if you do have someone or some party that you feel would be a good candidate for a moderator for this hearing, please submit it to the select board.
See, bud.
To the select board, because the select board, I'm leaving it up to them to choose the moderator for this public hearing.
It'll be nominated and then voted on.
Right, but I think that it would be prudent to get who's interested in, just a heads up, so we can look at,
Someone's gotta call Robert and make sure he's gonna be there.
right.
Yeah.
So, okay.
I mean, yeah, can you, I hate to say you, but you already did this part, can you just like,
Just make it work.
make the,
Just
can you
fix
just
it.
take this and
Yeah.
move a few things around, make it work, check the boxes, make sure I just want me, this is helpful, I think we should have this for the meetings, we
Absolutely.
circulate it.
Yeah, it should be
Put it up on the overhead display.
Yeah.
You got the laser pointer?
Yeah.
Yeah, my intent is to have it done, emailed out. I think the 5th is Friday, April 5th. But,
That would help, but can't do that. That'd be cool, I think it'd be good to have it, so people, general public can read it.
yeah.
We can read it.
We shall, unless, are there any additional comments, concerns, questions from the public? All right, so it's 9:27. I motion to, what's that?
26.
Yeah, so
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.